Yes.
Orthodox niggas don't play.
No.
No,
They don't play.
they spend all day like
This is
this
them
is them
every day in
everyday
church
church
for
for
hours.
hours.
Once I
Once I
found
found
out,
out,
like I was dating
dating
girls
girls
Orthodox,
Orthodox,
I'm
I'm
like,
like,
y'all
y'all
like
like
church
church
and
and
music
music
and
and
dances?
dances?
No,
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 no.
we don't.
That's not us.
They just stay
That's not
all
us.
day
That's
long.
them. That's the heathen over there. Us because just right there between Catholics and Baptists, right? Just just the difference is the way that we clap on beat. Speak on Catholics clap on one.
Okay.
We clap on an upbeat. That's how I say ABC. That's the Catholic singing the ABC.
Hmm.
No, it's better than that. A, B, C, D, E, F, dominum. H. They slide a little bit of Latin in that bitch. And but us, A, B, C, D, E, F. Because we're lively and we're up like that, we're up tempo. The Catholics were looking at us like, nah, you can't rejoice like that in the house of. And then you got the Pentecostal. They step to another. They go on another step. After all of that, depending on where you're from in the world, they're gonna judge each other.
Oh yes.
So Baptists from Africa, Baptists from Jamaica, Baptists from Haiti are not gonna look. They're gonna be like, you sing like that, like that. What's that gibberish you talking about? It's weird. Because you have to remember that black people hate everything about slavery except religion, right? So they're really gonna look at each other.
Man.
God.
Yo, preach. Whenever religion comes up, you can feel that deep rooted like, oh nigga, I'm tight. Pause.
But it's really.
Yo, yo, can you hear me?
This is the first time I have used video on Discord.
Nah, I feel that. I feel that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
The picture looks terrible. Why do I look like that?
You look fine on my end. It looks solid.
I got a space heater on and it's making a real weird light.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, it looks cool over here. Yep, yep. Just give me one sec. I'm just getting everything together, giving people some time to pull up.
Yeah, no rush.
How you feeling? How's your week so far?
I'm exhausted. I'm a federal employee on furlough and I've been picking up gig work on movie sets.
Got
I
it.
was like on the set last night until like 2:30 in the morning. I'm so tired.
Oh, dude. Yeah, my homie he works for the government too. He was just telling me about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it sucks. So I was like, I need some money.
Right. Yeah, nah, same. I was I'm freelance, so all I do is gig work, but I picked up this little job over doing some logistics stuff for DreamHack this weekend. So,
Mm.
that's literally up super duper early, there till super late. I'm just helping trucks find the docks where they need to go. So today was the last day, but I am pooped.
Yeah, I'm not used to that schedule. I'm like a go to bed early, get up early person.
Mm, I feel that. I wish I'm trying to be like you, honestly. Let me pull us up right here. Is this us? Yes, this is us. So, all right. So cool beats. All right. So we're just gonna hang tight for a little bit longer, wait for some more people to come through, and then we'll get started in a sec.
Yeah, no rush.
said, go slow motion like ocean waves. Lose track of time, little hunky don't crack the smile, no matter how long it takes. And even
Hello. Oh, peekaboo. Hi, friends. Today we're going to sing a song about if there's a heart in the United States, do you have a heart?
What's up? This is Lady Marauder, and look who I just ran into.
it's Washington.
No, it's not. It's Franklin.
Secondly, could you cross my mind? Are you good as are you good?
All right. Yo, yo. Let's freaking do it. Let me turn off this phone. Dude, I'm so hungry. I spent like the last, I don't even know, maybe like the entire week at my partner's house. And because I was working in the city every day. So I made sure I washed all my dishes and nothing was dirty, turned off the air, got rid of all of like the perishable food or whatever. And I came straight from work, straight to my house because I know I had the online session today, and I have no food. I'm over here eating these medieval servant crackers. They're so nasty. It's so bad.
What is this? What is this servant cooker? What's this?
I don't even listen. I don't know what it's called, but it's the most disgusting cracker. I'm usually like I'm good. I'm like a cracker bread person, but like
Mm.
I gotta go downstairs to find the.
Okay, yeah. I know Those are only good with like cheese on them.
Yeah, they're like hors d'oeuvre crackers, and like I've never had them without a little charcuterie situation. And so them they're plain. It's like basil oregano crackers with no salt. It's gross. It's so gross. What up, Stead? Glad you could come through tonight, brother.
Yo, yo, yo.
What's good with you? Did you ever pop out to High Bias?
This, what did I do this Wednesday? Something I did something this Wednesday. Something I wasn't able to go.
Okay, yeah, because I stayed for a bit, but I ended up leaving a little bit earlier just because I had to grab another event after.
Yeah.
It was super turned though. I mean, these last couple of Wednesdays have been insane. I'm not gonna lie, pretty crazy.
Yeah, I figured, because they more people are starting coming. I'm on to it's about to get cold, so they're gonna need
Yeah,
some heaters. Like some sun.
yeah, they got like the little heating lamp power things that they
Yeah,
have at like festivals or whatever, but it's not a lot. So, but I'm a winter like fall person. I love the cold. I love any reason to do a bonfire or to bring a blanket, little snuggy situation. So we might do like a marshmallow bonfire type deal at the joint. That might be kind of cool.
that's what's up.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I don't know what part of town you're in, Olive, but we have an event on Mondays and Wednesdays. But the Wednesday move is kind of like a little bit more grown and sexy type of deal. It's tight. It's tight.
Yeah, I saw your. I saw it on your Instagram. It was fun.
Yeah.
I live near AUC. I live close by the Peter Street space.
Oh, easy. Yeah. So I mean, Controllerize is a lot closer to you. That one's more, and that one's a little bit more like festive. It's video games, anime.
I went once. I was a little bit old for the crowd.
What?
But
Nah, dude, no way.
it's fun.
Nah, it's cool. It's intergenerational. If you're like into the nerdy shit, that's your tribe, no matter what.
I like it. It was a good time. I had a good time.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. Um, Number one, I really want to just say thanks for pulling up. I'm excited. We got a couple of things I want to cover, and I really want to get into the feedback portions. I have some stuff that I shot recently that I definitely want to share, just to, you know, give you some ideas on some scenarios you'll encounter. And I had like a really interesting one recently when I had to do some headshots. And because we have a smaller group tonight, I'm open to doing like a little less formal style of this session. So if either of you have any like particular questions or a specific thing you want me to cover or we can talk about before our feedback session, we can do that, because I don't want to speak auditorium style when there's only us two. Let's just kind of kick it. Um, Stead, you were in our first intro cohort as well as you were part of our intermediate cohort. So, this makeup class mainly is for our third intro cohort. But, if you have any particular questions or concerns or stuff that you just want to talk about in general, feel free to ask those questions. As well, Olive, if you have any particular questions that you had pertaining to the class, if there were some concepts you want us to kind of go over again. If not, I have another presentation set up that I don't think you didn't see it, Stead, because it wasn't a part of your cohort, but it's something I just did 2 weeks ago that I think is really, really dope to talk about. So you guys let me know whether we need to switch gears.
I'm good on what we covered in class, and I was excited for another opportunity to hear from other folks. And I did come somebody had sent me another photographer's work, and I was like, oh shit, the lighting on that is crazy. And so I was like, oh, I know exactly who to ask about that, like how you got that effect. So
Heck yeah.
when we have a question period, I want to show you this work. It's crazy.
Let's do it. I mean, honestly, let's get into that now. Let's get into the feedback now, and then at the end, we'll talk about the gear portion. Yeah, let's do that. Number 1, 2, your assignment, the stuff you posted, really dope. Really, really dope. It's so weird to look at, right? And I'm just pulling it up right now. What's always so interesting to me is how, like, slight differences in these settings and how our cameras react to different things can really show, like, you can find and that's why I like to practice, because it really helps you find like what you lean towards, right? Because I like a darker, moody, deep shadows type of setup, but these two first ones kind of like are clear like front runners in terms of like getting that mood. But
Mhm.
I don't know why, but it's something in this last one that's just, it just hits a little bit different, right? You can obviously see like it's a lower exposure, and I feel like the colors aren't as rich, but like to me it plays really well to just like that vibe, especially the subject matter that you chose, which is, I mean, you got a freaking, like, who has that in their house? That's freaking cool, right? I don't even
I
know,
have a great
which is amazing. But what were some of your, just general thoughts, and like, by going, by doing the assignment, like, what are some of the things that stood out to you for the style that you like to shoot and that you're looking to shoot?
So the first thing that jumped out at me, and this is more of a general thing, but I think I mentioned in class, like I usually shoot film on like an old camera from the '80s. I had a DSLR that I bought in like 2007, and this is my boyfriend's camera. It is much better than mine, and
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get the hang of the fact that like there's so much less, the word I'm looking for, like you're so much less constrained,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like the ISO on those is like 1,000, and the ISO of the auto one is 2,000, and I was like, that's not film that you can buy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out at what point like things get weird and noisy. So I had a really good time, kind of like using this as a basis to figure that out. And I'm like you, like I like kind of that moody setting, and I was surprised how much more I like the shutter priority one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess because I shoot on film, like I'm a lot of times I think in terms of aperture. I'm like, okay, well if I want to get it this low, like what do I have to do with the shutter?
Mm-hmm.
And so to make that shutter speed like a little bit faster, like it looked cool. It looked really cool. So
Yeah.
this is a good exercise.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. And dude, I love your work. Like, every time I meet a new photographer, or I always go and I creep on everything that they've ever posted ever. And like, with the majority of what you have on your Instagram, that's film, correct?
Yeah, most of the stuff from the last couple years is for sure.
Fire, fire. I mean, I love it. You said what?
It's so expensive.
It is. It is. Also, you know what? I got some film. A friend of mine gave it to me. I don't use it. He gave it to me just like it wasn't even. I wouldn't consider it wasn't like a friend.
That looks like black and white. That looks like a black and white.
Possibly. You see
Yeah,
that?
I can't. I see it's something 200, but
Is that something you can use? You think? Jeez, Louise.
I can't tell what it is. I can just see it's ISO 200.
Got you.
Film, something.
Either way, I'm gonna give it to you because I have film.
Hey, thank you.
I don't shoot it. Not gonna use it.
I appreciate that. I will make good use of it.
Heck yeah. I mean, I love your style. It definitely gives very much like Midwest emo, like rich, deep colors, emotional, very narrative. Like I'm a fan. Heavy, heavy. Um,
That's a great. I appreciate that.
heck yeah, heck yeah. So we got people. They popped in. Jasmine and Jasmine, what's going on? How you feeling?
Hello. I'm trying to get ready because I have to leave in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that I came and got as much info as I could.
Of course, of course. We appreciate you stopping by.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good week.
We are. We are. Thank you. And so right now we were getting ready to go over and go right into our feedback portion. But before we do that, do any of you have any questions, or did you have any concerns about our lesson on Sunday that you want me to kind of go over first before we go into our other portions? I will take your silence as a no. So, um, yeah. So honestly, Olive, you said you had some photos you wanted to submit. You can either put them into the chat here, or you can put them in feedback chat. And anyone else who has photos they would like to us have talk about, whether it's your work, work of someone else you want to kind of like dissect together, or even if you have some raw photos that you want me to edit or trying to show you my approach to editing them, just to give you an idea of like that process. I know it's a little bit premature. We haven't gotten to our editing portion, but I know we do have some students that are from other cohorts. So just throwing that out there. But get those photos ready now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this woman's website. It's just an Instagram post, and I guess I could just link that. I'm trying to figure out how to link.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Post share.
Fire.
Is there a chat in the class video here?
Yep. So we do have a video chat, but you can, if it's easier to navigate, you can also throw it right in the feedback chat as well.
I'm like 1,000 years old. I'm just not used to using.
Nah.
There it is. I see it. Hopefully that works.
Okay.
So I've never used any fancy lighting, right? I had like one flash for my camera that I bought the other day, and then it malfunctioned, and I never used it again.
Yeah.
So like I don't know how to use flash, but this woman's lighting is insane, and
Okay.
she's like photographing this like cat show, which these are usually held in like big auditoriums with gross fluorescent lighting, and the lighting on these is ridiculous. Like the next one I think is really like striking. It's so weird.
Let me follow it up a little bit. Okay. Let's just go through these shots.
Like how is she getting these like crazy effects? I don't know. I think my audio is really bad. I'm gonna mute.
No, you're not. Not at all. You're totally fine. I see. Yeah, these are fire. Nice. I love cats. I'm a cat person, so this is really dope. And shooting a cat show is kind of like that is dream subject matter for sure.
There's one on Saturday.
Where?
I think even Duluth. I emailed them. I was like, "Can I get him for free?" So I'm gonna go out there on Saturday, try to shoot it.
I didn't even realize that was a thing that happened in Atlanta. I always thought it was like it feels like a San Diego thing. Get out of here. Shoot me the info for that. That sounds fire, actually. This is dope. This is a dope shot. I mean, okay, so she's a great photographer. This is great work, right? And this is absolutely no slight to her work or anything or her style whatsoever. But I can tell you what she's doing, it's not super difficult and it's very attainable style, right? She's taking a very creative approach in terms of how she's using a speed light. And I think the strength of these shots are her creativity and her, the decisions that she made with these. But in terms of the lighting, man, like this really looks like one speed light, which is like that. It's the the detachable flash. Let me show you guys.
Okay.
So if I had to guess, right, I would say it's a speed light like this, right?
Okay.
One of these guys.
I got my film camera, just not for digital.
Right? Very simple ones. They have another one. They have like a Godox, which is an off-camera flash, but can be triggered wirelessly. So oftentimes photographers, and I can probably guess for like the shot, like for which shot? For this shot, this is probably a situation in which she had the off-camera flash like further away from her. And then she's shooting over here and the flash is like over here. And that's giving that effect as if there's like another spotlight coming from the side, right?
Okay.
And so, and then you take a shot like this where there's another example, right? She has an off-camera flash where the flash is inside the cat habitat thing right here. She's shooting from outside, and you see that natural framing, the fact that there's no light from that outside just gives it a nice layer of like depth, and it's almost like that that scene in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where they're going through the tunnel and you can kind of like see the stuff on the other end. Like it's really dope. Really, really dope. Yeah. This is a on-camera flash shot. It's probably not directly on top of the camera, but probably more off to the side here, right? Mm-hmm. Really, really dope stuff. And we have some portrait and some lighting workshops where we're going to mess around with, flash and off-camera lighting stuff. I'm going to see if I can get a couple flashes because I only have like 2. If I can get a few more for everyone to use, that'd be dope. But this shot is, I love this cat. This one is most likely a shot on top. But what happens, right? And for a shot like this, right? How familiar are you with like exposure and just the exposure triangle?
I'm moderately familiar, but again, like typical of my like 10 times K 1000 constraints where like 1000 is the fastest one.
Got you, got you. And so, really, honestly, a moderate understanding is all you need, because what's basically happening here, especially for this shot, right? Um, obviously she's not is a cat show, so she's not in a dark room. Like the room is well lit. But when you're using a external light source, especially like a flash, you have the option to slam your exposure really, really, really low. And when you bring your exposure low, you compensate by using a larger intensity brightness on your flash, right? That creates like an artificial spotlight isolation types of styling, because the background is dark because it's underexposed, but your flash exposes those areas that you want, and all the areas that you don't get any light whatsoever. And one of the cool things when you do something like that, right? If you understand aperture, when you are able to bring your, if you're trying to bring down your exposure, you have three options really. You can bring down your ISO to bring down the exposure to make everything dark. Or in this case, what I would imagine what she did, and just looking at this shot, she brought down her exposure a little bit, but she brought down her aperture more than anything, because she has a larger aperture. Because if you look here, you got a wide range of focus from this subject matter all the way to this person in the back. And even the cat is out of focus, but it's not like grossly out of focus. It's still pretty. You can still see a great deal of details on the cat. So if I had to guess, her basing her distance, because she's probably shooting from a far distance, her aperture is probably anywhere between, honestly, maybe like 10 to like maybe 18, right? So a really, really large aperture, really wide range of focus, and you achieve that by having, another external flash that can create that light, create that, that spotlight type of look. Really masterful, right? Really, really masterful. And here's another, and so here, this is less. So she has, she's not exposed as far down as this other shot, because you can see, the lighting in the background, the lighting on, the face. It looks less spotlight-ish, and it looks a lot more flat, kind of, fills in some areas. Even in the shadows, you can still make out a lot of details, right? Which is a stark contrast from something like this, where she fully slammed her exposure really low to get that nice, like, deep focus, high contrast and darks and brights, right?
So, okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but like this is one of those things where it's like
Interrupt.
a top moment. When you say something like exposure low, does that mean slower or fast?
So
Like,
okay, so check this out, right? The difference between film and digital. Exposure usually refers to speed. It's kind of in relation to speed when it comes to film. In digital, there is no such relation. When you're shooting digital, you can have a higher exposure or a lower exposure, and it doesn't necessarily affect your speed outside of what you're looking to decide, unless it has to do with your subject matter, right? So if you're shooting, fast moving subjects, you're going to require a higher shutter speed, right? Like 1/250th to like 1/500th of a second. A higher shutter speed creates a darker image. So naturally, just in that relation, like that's the relationship to speed when it comes to digital photography. For film photography, it's a little bit different. And I'm not an expert on film photography, but I do know that there are different speeds um for when it comes to film, because a brighter film gives you the option to use a higher shutter speed, because the brighter the film, that means you have the room to bring your shutter speed really, really low, because the exposure is really high, and you can make it faster, but faster means darker. You understand like the relationship?
yeah, I just want to make sure I was like getting the numbers the right direction.
Got it. Yep,
Like,
yep.
so.
But you're right when it comes to film, but when it comes to digital, that's not necessarily the
So
same
higher is the
relationship.
bigger numbers.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, please go on, please.
One really cool thing that I noticed here, right, in this shot, so what's really cool about using flash photography and using external light is that, like we talked about, right, light is the subject matter. That's the only thing that we shoot. So if you were to bring your exposure really, really low, and you take a shutter, you take a snap, and there's no flash or anything like that, you get a black image. If you use a flash, right, the light that when the light flashes, that's the only time an image is captured. So even though you take a photo and the screen is black, technically you did not take a photo at all. Nothing. There was no light that hit the sensor, right? A capture. Here's the thing, right? When you go back in the past in terms of when cameras were first created, they didn't call them photos. They didn't call them captures. They didn't call them shots. A photo was called an exposure because photos were only created when your sensor was exposed to light. So they say, oh, I have one exposure from this time, or I'm going to get 2 exposures here. In the same sense, the same principles apply, right? If your camera doesn't have any light that enters it, you can press the shutter button on you want. You actually did not take a photo. You made no exposures, essentially. It's only when light hits the sensor that the photo is actually created. So what's happening here, and you can see a little bit of the fraying around the head, right? You can see that it's a little blurry. You can see that there's like a little ghostly effect. And I'm gonna zoom in so you can all see that a little bit better. Oh geez, Louise. Oh. And there's a couple images where it does that, but there's one particular, that where you really can see it. So you can kind of see here, right? Do you all see that?
Yeah, his hair's kind of like fuzzy.
It's kind of fuzzy, but it's also kind of like, it's almost kind of blurry. And even if you look at the shoulders here, right, the lines on his jacket are kind of blurrier, but the lines here with the light are sharp. The reason for that is because she's on this shot, and you can even see it right here in the hands, right? There's kind of like a ghostly effect. You can kind of see like an aura around the fingers. That's because she's shooting on a slower shutter speed, right? Now, generally, if you were to shoot on a slower shutter speed and there's a bunch of light around, you'll get a really blurry image. But when you shoot with the lower shutter speed and then you eliminate the majority of the light by exposing lower, and then you use a flash, the areas that the flash touches will come out sharp. But the areas that the flash doesn't touch, they won't be visible. But the areas that have like a little bit of light, right, that fall off around the corners and around the shadowy areas, they'll get a little bit of blur. That creates a absolutely wonderful effect that I personally love and I like to employ a lot. That's one of my favorite styles of photography. I love long exposure stuff in general, but utilizing that flash, a slower shutter speed, and then just allowing like the light and the areas that get kind of blurry do their own thing can create a wonderful effect, right? I think I have some work on my page that reflects that, right? I can give you an example. I don't shoot that style often for like a lot of my current clients just because I prefer they prefer like a cleaner look. But there's a lot of stuff that I personally shoot quite often in that style. Let me see. Should be something not too far down. Okay, so well no. Right. So like here, bam. Here's an example, right? So this is not an effect. This is all done in camera. And I'm gonna show you. Okay, here's a better example, right? So you can see all these floating artifacts. You can see the light drags and the light trails, and it just kind of gives it like a background aura. That's just me using a slower shutter that captures all of the motion of the light. But the flash, it freezes the areas that receive the flash, keeping them sharp. And then the areas that aren't receiving the flash kind of get fuzzy. And it just creates a really cool focus and emphasis, right? You can see that here again. You know, a little blurry, but you got that, that flash. And I remember being an early photographer and seeing a lot of Nat Geo photographers do that. A lot of photojournalists do that. And I was like, man, how are they getting that effect where I'm using a flash, but they also got like the colors are still there. The ambience of the room is still there. And I hated flash photography for a very long time because I felt like I lost so much in terms of color and like atmosphere. But, understanding, that exposure triangle and realizing that you don't really need a particularly fast shutter speed when you're using a flash in general, because that flash, the photo takes as quick as the flash is, right? Your shutter speed technically becomes the flash speed, right? It's deep. We'll talk more about it when we have our lighting section, but
Yeah.
it's really cool. It's extremely cool. Extremely freaking cool.
Thank you for that. Like that's a really cool way to conceive of things. I wanna see if I can borrow a flash and try. Maybe this weekend. I'll put in the chat the cat show. My friend had sent me that post and I was like, oh shit! Like that was the first thing I think I photographed when I got a camera was a cat show. Like
Fire.
I don't know, like 2008. So I was like, I can't wait to go back and try it. And it's just happening this weekend.
Amazing. Yeah, I got a flash if you want to borrow one. That's a no.
Yeah, if I can borrow it between for Saturday, I think I'm probably leaving pretty early in the morning. But if you're around tomorrow, I'd love to come and grab it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, that's no brainer. I'm going to be shooting an event tomorrow, from like 2 to 7. So if we can, if you want to grab it tomorrow, like later in the day, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, if we can work it out, that'd be great. Otherwise, I think that my boyfriend probably has one. It's his camera.
Got you. Got you. Yeah. If not, just let me know.
I'll hit you up. Thank you.
Heck yeah. All right, Stead, these shots are fire. They're butter. You want me to are we good to talk about those now? Is that cool with you?
Go for it, Captain.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's start with my boy, Steady Cam. So, talk to me about these shots, right? There's a couple from a couple different settings, but tell me what stands out to you about this shot now. What do you like about it?
So for those shots with that background, I went to an event at Rock Steady. They would have like a music showcase. So I was cool with the host. He let me take some pictures. So I think what really stuck out to me about that was I really like instead of her posting, she was just like really into her singing, and to me, I captured, what I felt like was the essence of her singing. Like she was really feeling it and getting into her groove with her song at that time.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I mean, I can definitely feel that, and those are like two of the things you really want to make sure you capture when you're shooting music. You want those performance shots that are going to be good for the artist to use and like PR and press photos, but you also want to make sure you take time to get like those really emotional shots where the artist is feeling the moment themselves, and it's not necessarily always the most sexy shots, but they're the most emotional, and this is a great example of that, honestly. One thing I like about this shot, one thing I really like about this shot was a couple of things, but the main thing I like is the composition is pretty stellar, right? And in terms of like what you decided to include, what you didn't include, like it's a great focal length. And I love like the background stuff. I really like this guy, right? Like I really like, hold on, let me get my little pen tool. Yeah, no, I really like this dude because one, the angles are solid, right? He's facing inward, which is kind of like I'm looking at him and it directs my eyes this direction. And then like this dude back here, it frames her very nicely. And one of the things when it comes to conveyance and storytelling through images is, utilizing different focal lengths to say different things, right? So tighter shots usually can convey deep emotion, intimacy, things like that. But when you shoot a little bit wider on certain subjects, especially if they have a dynamic or, just specifically aesthetic background, it can really convey vulnerability almost, right? And what I like about this shot, it shows how she's affected by the environment around her. And it's one of those things about photography and about art that you really can never fully articulate in a definitive way, but it's just something here that really works. Like the angles of like my guy, right? Like this angle here, and then you got this angle here, and then you got this angle, boom, right? Then you got his legs, bam, this leg's pointing here, and then you got these here, and then you gotta get this curvature here, and like her fingers pointing this direction. Like all these angles is very much like, and you have these vertical lines going down here. It kind of reminds me of like that what's the joint with Jesus? The Last Supper. It kind of gives like a little bit of a Last Supper type of vibe, right? And that's the cool thing about art. Like it's always looking for reference and repetition, and like in this way, it just has a lot of compositional value, right? And even though she, as this main subject matter, she's not in focused as much as the background, but because of how dynamic and interesting the background is, as the viewer, I can look at this shot and I can go, well, I feel like he may have intentionally kept the background in focus. If they weren't in focus, I can say, oh, he intentionally kept the subject in focus. Like, it's the background is so solid and your composition is so strong. Whether or not this was intentional or not, it works completely. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's just a really well composed image. And that's why I tell, people all the time, it's like, technical execution aside, if you have an eye and you have great composition, right, there will be some value in the images that we take. And honestly, I don't really see too many misses here that are on you, right? Like this mic stand, I hate it so much. And there's nothing you can do about that outside of, using some AI tools in Lightroom to like erase it. So in terms of like the final product of an image and like that post processing, that's some of the stuff I would clean up. Like I would get rid of this. I would get rid of this little whatever the heck that doohickey is. And that's staying on the dress, like little small blemishes and things that I would do just to kind of like minimize people's ability to be distracted by the other artifacts in the image. But in terms of your execution as a photographer, like no notes, really solid, really really solid. And you've been in the class before. You've been in a lot of these sessions. You know what I'm always going to say: composition and just like really tightening up on that is going to be keen. And something that I generally always going to do is just like a little bit of a rotate. Just kind of find that balance, and then you'll be solid, right? And then even and like my eye, and this will come with time. But like I see shit like this right here. You see that little pole with that little sliver of light.
Yeah.
Like that distracts me. Even and when it comes to shooting for clients, when it comes to shooting for music or venues, right? Something that you also want to do, and it's just like a good general rule sometimes, like if you can get rid of this type of stuff, just clean it up, right? Little things like that, because the venue is going to be really happy to get a shot that doesn't look messy. Not saying it's messy because of what you did, it's messy just because of the set. But if you can clean up chords, maybe use a brush tool to kind of like darken out these areas so that you don't see the details, and just really continue to like grab and like direct the focus on what you want people to see. And even sometimes having certain brands visible, right? In most cases, I always get rid of like a brand labeling, unless it's like, if it's a guitar player and it has like a guitar logo of the brand that they're using, I'll use that, right? If it's a keyboard player and it has Roland on it, I'll use that. Stuff that relates to the subject, right? But if this said like Walt or like Duracell, shit that doesn't have anything to do with the artist or music, I'll get rid of that stuff. That way, repost value, saving value, all that stuff. But even here, we got like we got a couple little toes right here. You know what I'm saying? Like just just a small crop, great image, great post. Just do another once over, and then as much as you can, if you have the ability to, use any erasing tools, maybe get rid of some of this stuff that can help, not distract from the main image. But great shot, great shot. Solid shot here, right? This is just a solid, event shot of people at the event, right? Honestly, no notes. Oh, no notes. And like and that's what you're at a stage in your your journey where your execution is very consistent, is very solid, and that next step is just going to be another once over, the mindfulness of photography, right? And then also your post-production game can be really can improve you another whole another level sometimes, right? Like given the circumstance, you probably were walking by, you seen them, you say, hey, can I get a photo? It's like, cool, bam, grab the photo. So you can't necessarily control your environment, but in post-production, you can cook this light, you can cook this thing, get it out of here. Other than that, in terms of exposure, execution, everything looks good. I feel like it looks like your ISO is a little bit higher than it needs to be. Because you are using a flash. So you don't if you need to get brighter images, just increase the intensity of the flash. Don't increase the ISO, because you will get a bright image. And the thing about using a flash when you have an overexposure in ISO is that you can really see those like multicolored grains and artifacts, right? So, and then and I'm not sure if this was in a lot of times what ends up happening too is if your ISO isn't high enough or if it's too high, and that which is a funny thing, right? If your ISO is too high, you'll get some grain. If your ISO is too low, and then in post you try to brighten it up by increasing the exposure or increasing the shadows, you will start to see that noise and those artifacts if you're not shooting like in raw mode, right? I'm not someone who's gonna like continually tell people you have to shoot in raw unless you're not a real photographer. But if you're not gonna shoot in raw, your exposure game and your execution needs to be pretty on point. If you're going into a situation where you have some dimly lit areas or you may not, like the lighting or color arrangements and you feel like you're going to want to have more of that control in post-production, then shooting in raw will be the best option. But great shot overall. Just keep an eye on that ISO, especially when you're using your, your external flash.
Gotcha.
Great image, solid image. Again, nothing here is your fault necessarily. This pole is the worst, bro. It's the worst.
Yeah, I tried to get rid of the post with the razor tool, but every time I did it, it would mess up the image.
Yeah, it's for this shot, it's a much harder like fix in terms of eraser tool. Like here, you got some details, right? You got a little bit of a pattern, but it's not too intricate. I feel like it'll make it look similar enough. This shirt is a no-brainer. It'll be able to get rid of that easy. You might have some issues on like the buttons here. The solid area will be fine. It'll be fine here. It'll be fine here. Pretty much everywhere. You might get a weird look down here because of the pattern. But I feel like, if you mess around with it, keep working at it, it might be good. But for this shot, I mean, you're dealing with a face. And then also, it's not just the pole itself. It's casting a shadow. So if you get rid of that, you also got to get rid of shadow. And it'll just be way too many like weird, uncanny artifacts in that to make it reasonable. So that's not your fault. But in terms of image selection, you definitely want to make sure when you're shooting action, just you got a digital camera, fire them bitches off. Like get as many shots as you can because you don't want to be in a situation to where the only usable image from a performance is one where somebody's eyes are halfway closed, right? Like she's most likely not going to be happy with this image, right? Even though composition is fire, the patterns are fire, the light, the exposure, everything else here is phenomenal, right? But there's just some artifacts that she may not like in terms of this image. And as the photographer shooting commercial work, people's response to your work is a lot more of a priority than rather your own execution and how you feel about it, right? And it's like a couple things that you just want to be mindful of, and just when it comes to submission of photos or sending things off to a client, just keep that in mind, right? Like no slight to your work and your execution here, but I wouldn't send this off to the client or the people performing, even though she looks good. She's going to be most likely reluctant to use this image because of how the background singers look, and they are in a prominent position to where that attention will be taken away from her. But great image, and of course, to always be that broken record, cropping is key, right? This line right here doesn't serve. Just bring it in. Just bring it in right here. Right, no issue bringing it in right here, and then also you got this line here, and then anything that kind of keeps that frame and keeps things from being distracting is always going to be a plus. But great image, great shots. I like everything you're shooting here from Rocksteady, and then the creative decision to do black and white I think is really fire because there's so much like texture and there's so many patterns in this space that it just looks really nice. It looks really, really cool. Kind of reminiscent of like a Studio 54 type of vibe, back in those, same here. Okay. And the only thing now, right, taking a shot like this and then taking a shot like this, right? The key difference between because both what I'm seeing in both is that the main subject matter is out of focus, right? But the main difference here is that there's so much compositional value in your background that it totally works. It's sensational, right? But here it looks a bit less intentional just because of how much how much of the composition doesn't cater towards, you know, what we're supposed to be looking at. Like as a viewer, I'm not necessarily sure where you want me to look, right? I don't know what the subject matter is. I mean, I know the setting, but I don't know what you're taking a picture of. And whether you're shooting, there are situations where shooting something chaotic with like a huge set list of different things can be very beneficial. But in this setting, right, you're doing commercial work for, a live performance where there's audience members and there's performers and there's background performers. When you look at an image like that for commercial work, you need to be able to immediately find what the subject matter is and the purpose of the image. And I just feel like in this particular image, it's not as obvious to know what the purpose is, right? You have like these people here, and look, only until I zoomed in right now did I realize that my boy had a guitar. I thought he was just like a dude off to the side, but now I do realize that he is a part of the show, but he's behind some people. I'm not mad at the exposure, and I've been in Rocksteady. It's very dark in there. It's very hard to light, and I'm not sure what their setup was that night. But in terms of the exposure and what you were able to capture, I think this is a great image. I feel like that if the main subject matter was in focus, like right here, that would greatly transform the quality of like viewing when it comes to this. So really, only note for this one is just focus, and then as always, tighten up on that composition. Right, it's good sometimes as a rule of thumb to just shoot a little bit wider, especially if you have a good camera with like a larger range of megapixels, and that way you can crop in and out, blah blah blah. But for the most part, if you can, shoot to kill. Right, that's our motto. We shoot to kill. We don't shoot for post. And so as much as you can, minimize those distractions if we can. You see this all over here is either you're either in a shot or you're not. So we bring that in, right? Not too bad. I most likely, because it's difficult to see, I'm probably going to bring in this a little bit more because I want to see if I can put my subject on that third line, or at least as close as I can without losing too much of the value, right? Like I can't put it right there, but I can get her close. So I'm probably going to do something like that, right? For the subject matter that's visible, it's not ideal composition, but in terms of like how I would place her, don't do too much. Just do anything. But yeah, and just in terms of how I place her, I would most likely do something like this. And then honestly, we don't need all that headspace either. We'll probably come down here and just bring this up, maybe. Boom. Right? The overall layout and composition is not, it distracts from what we're looking for. But if I was going to frame a shot or this shot, this is how I frame it in relation to the subject matter, what she's engaging with, and in the background. But again, tracking that focus was the only thing you really missed in this image. But otherwise, great. Dope shot. And we talked about this before, bro. Like your work when you're out and about shooting on the belt line, shooting people outside in like natural lighting, and just like you do a really good job of just capturing people that just makes them feel human. Like there's so much of her personality that's present in this image, and that's your bag, bro. And I'm still waiting on your Beltline series of just I'm waiting on it, bro, because you do such a great job, man. And like great lighting, great framing, great composition. Did you do any direction when it came to how she posed or what she did here?
So that was the homie right there. She was like selling some of her goods, so she was mingling with people. So I was trying to get her by herself, and that was the only time throughout the whole time I was with her that she wasn't talking to anybody. So I was like, if I don't get this right now, it's not gonna happen.
Heard. Well, listen, you crushed it. Honestly, you crushed it. Great framing. Great house. I love the color, the exposure. Composition is solid because it shows context and depth. Right. It shows a little bit of the setting. You're in a booth, but then you also make sure to capture enough of the background to where we can see. Oh, this is a this is a festival, vendor, bazaar, whatever. Like there's enough of this background story that caters to what's going on. Dope shot, no notes, 8, no crumbs. Again, right here, solid shot. Your composition and how you approach and your angles are super duper solid, right? Really fire. You didn't miss focus here, not at all by any means, because you got, the majority of the main subject matter in focus. The only thing I would have done different is maybe, a higher aperture to make sure you cover a wider range. Because this guy is solid, 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 but my guy right here is a little bit out of focus. So just when you're shooting larger, and I already know you're shooting a festival, so you're not, you're kind of shooting on the fly, right? So just a general rule of thumb, like your outside is dummy bright anyway, right? So you don't necessarily need a lower aperture, right? You can comfortably shoot around like 8, f8, and like adjust maybe your shutter speed, because if you're shooting outside in broad daylight, to be honest, with the sun, even with an overcast, your shutter is probably not getting anywhere lower than 1/400th of a second, most likely. If your ISO is at like anywhere between, if I'm shooting outside, right, and I'm shooting people in like a festival or an event, I keep my ISO at like between 2000 and maybe like 3200, and then I put my aperture where I want it. Like I keep my aperture like around 8, and then I just adjust my shutter speed a little bit, because even if I bring my shutter speed down to brighten up an image, it's so bright, the lowest it's probably going to go is like 400, and then I might go up as high as like, I don't know, 1/1000th of a second, just to get it darker in an area where it might be too bright. Even still, you're not missing focus, you're not missing, shutter speed, you're not missing moments. And even though you're out and it's really bright, people tend to always want to bring their ISO down to 100, because they're like, high ISOs are going to give you noise. It's like, oh, that high ISOs doesn't create noise in an image. Noise in an image comes from when there's a lack of light hitting the sensor generally. So, if you're shooting outside and you don't need to have a high ISO, still use, a moderate ISO, because that gives you a lot more room to like make your shutter speed whatever you want. Like you can make it really fast or really low, and it gives you wide range of creativity when it comes to how you approach your aperture, right? You can bring your aperture higher, to create like a wider range of focus, or bring it really, really low so that you have like a really artistic, blurry background, depth of field. But, honestly, put your ISO somewhere at like, when you're shooting outdoors, you can put it somewhere comfortably at like maybe 2 to 3,000. Leave it there. Never touch it again for the rest of the time you're shooting outside, and just jump around between your aperture and your shutter speed to, change how you want to approach that lighting. But for this shot, wider aperture, a tighter aperture, a higher number, just to increase that wider range of focus, so that my guy can stay just as sharp. And again, cropping, right? This pole, we don't need it. This pole, we don't need it. Let's just take a look at it. Let's see. Let's just, get that right here. Boom. Is there a way to lock the, I don't know, whatever. But bring that in here. Bam. Bring that in here. Bam. And then we'll compensate with that. Same here, right? We got a little artifacts, some shit that we don't really need, can be distracting. We want to keep our eyes on my boy head, because we don't want to go too low. But like right here is pretty solid, and I'll probably come up a little bit as well, because we know it's a bike. So we don't need this wheel. We don't need this wheel. We don't see enough of the skull to give us the context that we're looking for. And we got this corner that's not really helping us. So we're going to bring that up a little bit. And then we're going to save that. Bam, just a little bit more focused. A lot less distracting, right? Composition is key. Cropping is key. And just making sure we stay focused in terms of like our subject matter, and don't anything that doesn't cater towards or help tell the story of your subject, 99% of the time it distracts from the subject. So that's why being mindful and like always knowing what to add and what to exclude, right, is important when it comes to approaching our composition. Otherwise, great work though. Great work. Let's go. Where else we have? Okay, that was the other shot. Bam. And this shot, who uploaded this? This was Jasmine. She left. She had to go, but we're going to still honor her submission and talk about how dope of an image this is. Great colors, great framing. great decision to shoot wide in a situation where you really want to tighten up on certain things, and also she didn't get too wide to where she incorporated too much that wasn't useful. In most cases, I would say crop in to get rid of these types of artifacts. But for whatever reason, this really works. I like this little L shape. It kind of complements the space. It helps with like that framing almost, right? Because like you have wood on this bottom, a top right corner, and you got this wood on the frame on this bottom left corner, right? Like our brains just kind of tell us what works and what doesn't work. And it's not always about the rules. Sometimes it's just about what feels good, right? Even this chair kind of like being here, it's like a controlled chaos that I'm really a fan of. And there's like there's a couple little artifacts that I personally would probably try to get rid of. Like I would get rid of this paper if I could, and then I don't know if this was like a proper like mouse hole, that would be so hard. That would be amazing, but it's not. It's like caulking or whatever. It distracts the heck out of me. I don't know why. So I probably would get rid of that if I was processing this image. And I probably would just shoot a little bit wider. I really would have liked to get the entire plant. That's just me. But good image. Really, really a fan of it. Anyway, really solid. I love the lighting. Great exposure. If I had to guess, I feel like this is from maybe a cell phone. But like we know that don't matter. A good shot's a good shot. So let's check out, I think Jasmine Johnson uploaded some images. Heck yeah, dope. I'm about to download these. Jasmine, Jay, are you cool with me sharing these images and talking about them with the class?
Yeah, that's fine.
Heck yeah. And how you feeling?
Did
You
you
good?
make it to I'm good. I'm good. My sinuses are bothering me a little bit.
Oh, I'm
Did
sorry.
you make it to Hot Bias last night?
I did. I was there for a little bit, but I didn't stay.
Early.
Yeah, I didn't stay the whole time just because one of my friends, they had like an anniversary event that they were doing, so I wanted to pop in just to show some support. But
That was a wise decision. I don't know how packed it was before you left, but
it
it
got
was
bananas.
crazy.
It got
It was
bananas.
crazy because it was cold and no one was outside. So I was like, I don't know how somebody would move around
I mean, we
in
can,
this, but
if
yeah.
you want, we can go over. I didn't edit those shots yet, but we can go over some of the images that I got, and I can show you how I approached like a situation like that.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. And these, none of them are edited. There were some of the ones I was considering for the showcase,
Nice.
and then like two of them I tried to edit, or I'm interested in how you edit it. But if we don't have time, that's okay. It's no big deal. But
Yeah, we got a little time. We got some
yeah,
time.
this one,
Okay.
I'm like, I love this photo, but I wasn't sure like how to edit it, especially to print it because it was so dark. But yeah.
I'm a fan. Honestly, I really like it. It's really dramatic, really dynamic lighting. Um, and Olive. So this was a shot we actually did during one of our photo walks. And we brought out some lighting, and I had some cool strobes for everyone to use. And this is an example of us using some like getting exposure to some lighting scenarios that and touching gear that we may not necessarily have access to.
Jasmine, I don't know you, but I love this. This is so cool.
It's strong. It's strong. It's a very, very strong image. Honestly, it's not too dark. It's not too dark to like submit or use for anything. Like the darkness, I think, is a really good. It plays into it. Now, do you remember what type of lighting this is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, okay, because he's a little bit out of tilt. I would say split, but because his head is tilted, I would say broad because the lighting is closer to me.
Now, kind of, sorta, because his shoulders are level with you, right? So, because his shoulders are level with you, there is no one side of his face that's closer or further. So this will be split lighting, right?
Yeah.
Solid execution. I mean, honestly, the only thing I would do, it's nothing really I would do differently, to be real. I like this shot quite a bit. I might have shot just a little bit wider, but that's a creative decision, not a technical decision. And just in terms of like housekeeping, right? Because as a photographer, your job is not only to take an image and take a photo, but also be attentive of your subject matter and make sure, everything has balance. So just a rule of thumb for when you're going into the future and conducting your own shoots going forward but just like before you, just take a good look at your person, see what's going on, right? Like, this little zipper line, can we fold that down? Is it only because some of it exposed, some's not exposed, right? Like this little gap between the strap and this strap, I probably would level that up. I would make sure the necklace is straight and make sure whatever this pendant is centered or sitting in a place where we can see it. Things like that, right? And that's not a technical thing, right? Like technically as a photographer, you crushed it. But just in terms of like preparing you for shooting in the future and just like the type of mindset and mindfulness you need to have when you're approaching a shoot, that's one of those little housekeeping things that you can do to just like really inject little areas of attention to detail that will just bring your image like to a full connection when it comes to your viewer, right? But great execution otherwise is solid. In terms of approach and editing, when I look at deep shadows like this, my body and my spirit immediately is like throw it in black and white. Like when I see these types of shadows, a black and white process can be really, really dope. And when I see like you have like a pretty wide range of focus because there's like a lot of focus on a couple different areas, man. So like because of how much of the shot is in focus, you have a lot of texture and a lot of detail, and textures and details tend to shine in black and white or monochromatic processes. So that's probably how I would approach that. But great work. Oh, where are we at? Okay, bet. Great image. I like this image. I like the framing. I like the framing a lot, and I see that you intentionally want to make sure you incorporate this stump, dude. It looks very because of the framing. It looks very conceptual, almost like an indie band cover, like low key. It kind of feels like an album cover, right? Like it feels like something like I don't know, Grandma's Tree by the overall twins or something. I don't know. Something like that. But like it gives a really dope energy and like great execution in terms of composition. Like we talked about, housekeeping always. One rule that we always talked about before when it comes to our horizon lines, as best as we can, we don't want our horizon lines cutting through the head of our subject matter, right? We pretty much want to avoid that to the best of our ability. If you're shooting in a situation where you can't avoid that, that's fine. But we want to just you don't want any type of lines or anything, whether it's the horizon line or any vertical line like a tree or a telephone pole or anything that can just distract, right? Because remember, lines, they lead. So when you're looking at ahead, right, subconsciously and consciously sometimes your eyes are going to want to follow that line, and it's going to start taking your eyes away from where you're supposed to be looking. You can see it a little bit here with this dude. Like I'm looking at his head, and then I kind of want to go up this tree, right? And it's just one of those weird things that we do. So keeping lines from intersecting or crossing over our subject matter's heads, especially, we want to avoid. And the further from the head, sometimes can be the better. If you are going to do some weird lighting stuff, right? Wes Anderson is one of my favorite examples when we talk about interesting, unique, and also unorthodox styles of composition. Like, you can do something really cool where you can get the horizon line and level it across like their shoulders, or maybe your subject matter is wearing stripes horizontal, and so you use the horizon line to kind of line up with the horizontal stripes. Lots of cool shit you can do, right? Remember, these aren't rules that you must follow, but they're just guidelines that you can utilize to kind of like help inject aesthetic value. But if you have intention and you have purpose behind it, you can do anything that breaks a rule and it looks really, really cool. And then always cropping, general housekeeping. We got a little bit of a trash can here. Doesn't help us tell the story. Get him out of here, right? Get him out of here. Bam, right? And if you don't want to eliminate like the aesthetic value or the aspect ratio or like the framing of everything, if you don't want to crop it because you got some stuff over here, the erase tool, we talked about it. Jasmine, you were in our last cohort, so you went over this stuff. So whenever you have something like that, you can either have the decision of cropping it out, or you can go into Lightroom or whatever app you use and get rid of something like that. But that is not a technical execution thing. It's a composition thing. And then that's a post-processing thing. In terms of execution and how you shot this image, absolutely stellar. Great color, great lighting. great decisions that you made when it came to your aperture, because there's so much in focus that makes sense, that matters, and the areas that don't make sense, that don't matter, aren't in focus. Great conveyance. And then also just something I would do, not a note, just a thing that to be mindful of when you're processing sometimes. Take your, when you're doing your crop, take that third line and just put it right there. I like to put the eyes on the third line generally, right? I don't want to lose too much headspace because we got that stump, so I'll put the third line on his eyes instead, right? But remember, putting our main subject matter as close as we can to like these intersections is going to be really cool. I wish I could hold this and move my mouse, but you see those intersections at each point where the vertical and horizontal third lines hit. Placing a subject matter there can go crazy. And honestly, I don't know how much of this we need, so we can probably push in and really place the whole thing on that third line. Bam. Bam. Like something like that, right? Let's see how that looks. I like it. A little bit more focused, a little bit closer, a little bit more intimate. It kind of reminds me of like that one shot. What's it called? American Gothic, with the husband and the wife standing in front of the barn or the pitchfork. Like yeah, I really like that shot, and I mean that artwork, and like this kind of gives me that vibe, and I think it's really really dope. Solid, dope work. Love this shot. We love us some AC in our photo 101 class, and yeah, man. I just would probably rotate because look, we got an artifact here that doesn't really cater towards any of our story needs, right? So we're going to kind of rotate it. Naturally, it's going to crop that out. And when I'm rotating, right, generally what I'm looking for just anything that's going to help me do like level. So I'm using this bookshelf as a kind of like a marker. I'm not trying to get it like parallel with my lines because you shot it at an angle, and also just the perspective kind of, they're not going to be straight up, but I'm just trying to find something that kind of gives it more balance, right? So I'm just going to kind of probably come somewhere in there. And then for me, I'm looking just for any reason to just kind of keep the direction and the focus and emphasis on my subject matter better. Right. So also too, we got our third line at this bottom one. Y'all see that? The bottom horizontal third line. We don't need as much as that floor space. So I'm just going to bring him up and really put that intersection between the third lines as close to the middle and his center point as possible, right? So we got him sitting right here and on the third line, but also really close to his midsection is really close to that intersection, what do they call it? Cross section, right? So save. Let's just see how that looks. Just a little bit more balanced. Just it's not a different image, but it just feels balanced, and that's what we want to look for, right? We're looking for balance and aesthetic harmony between the color elements, the texture elements, compositional elements, as well as our subject matter. Is that making sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Fire. Solid work. No notes. Where is he at? Did I miss? Okay. I like this. This is my jam. I love a dark, moody something. And I love, because we talked about this when we were on I forget which one this was, but this one our photo walks when we were in the city. And yeah, you exposed for the sky and you really cooked it, right? And it being a raw image is fire because there's so much room to do some really cool creative stuff in your post process. Yeah, honestly, this is an artistic work. So there aren't as many notes that I would give artistically because that's your decision to make. The only things I would do is as you approach your post, clean up things that are going to distract, right? So like, I'm on the fence when it comes to this line. Kind of like it, kind of don't. That's your call. But this little corner of like, I think this is the West End or whatever, not feeling that. And then you can also kind of see, right? There's a little part where like the roof kind of goes back up. You see that?
Yes.
Right? Tiny, minuscule, but just bring it in, right? We're not looking for perfection, but we're definitely gonna, everything that we see, we kind of go for it, right? So, like that, in post, probably get rid of that. You could crop in either way, and then when you're in post and you're, if you're using your magic erase tool, I will probably go in and just grab a couple areas that just are going to distract us, right? So like this little light, It's cool. I like it for what it represents because it's just like one room that has like a light on and like a little bit of a curtain, kind of is what it looks like. But it's too far to really make out what it is, and there's no way we can really emphasize it. So it serves to be more of a distraction. So I'll probably get rid of that. I'll get rid of that. Get rid of that. I'll get rid of this little artifact, and then I wouldn't get rid of these windows. If there's a way you can mess around and see if you can like brighten them up a tad bit, a tiny bit, right? And you can do that with your whites or your highlights, right? I wouldn't go in and try to bring up your shadows because the shadows aren't the things that we see. We see a little bit of light here. So bringing up your whites and your lights will be cool. Um, and I think an effect wise, it'll help with all of these lights kind of go pretty crazy, right? You know what we're gonna do? We're not going to talk about it. We're going to be about it. I'm going to throw it in Lightroom right now and just kind of show you a little bit how I would approach it. Because I'm excited just looking at it because I think there's so much potential for just like really funky shit to happen. All right. And, today is updating. Crazy. Of course it's updating right now. Right now it's updating. Hopefully I'm on my big boy computer, so I think it's going to go fast. We'll see. You know, the jury's out on that. But let's go look at your other images while we wait for that garbage. But yeah, dope image. We'll come back to that in a sec. Am I tripping? What am I doing? That. Got it. So dope image, great capture. I think your exposure is where it needs to be. You have a sharp image. You know, you can see a little bit of light and movement because of your shutter speed is a little bit too slow. But I know this room. I know where you're at. Capturing a solid exposure here is not an easy task, right? If I were to grade this room, this is the high bias event that I shoot on Wednesdays, and it's kind of become like a hotbed for a lot of my students to kind of come get like some shadowing on and just to shoot this event. And it's a cool event and it's really, really dope. But it's definitely like medium, low to medium hard. Like it's not an easy room to shoot, and this is definitely not like this is not a beginner friendly place to shoot. So you being able to, ooh, look at that. But you being able to like get this image and at such a high quality and at such a good execution is very impressive. And I'm happy and I'm proud of you for that. The only thing that I would have done differently and just maybe look at going forward the next time is just shoot a little bit wider, right? Shoot a little bit wider, get more of the environment. They always be having that shit on. So incorporate, the outfits, show more of the setting, show more of like, the space, because the space is really dope. It's really ambient, lots of cool stuff. And because, you may have some limitations in terms of gear, and you might have some noise artifacts because you have to shoot at a higher ISO, or you have some blurriness because you have to shoot at a slower shutter speed. The wider you are, the less likely you'll be able to see and make out some of like the artifacts that come from gear that isn't accommodating of this space. So just shoot a little bit wider, and then of course, composition and cropping and rotation, right? Boom. I want to rotate it to keep it a bit more balanced, right? Unless you're making a creative decision to do something askew, right? Like we talked about it before, but like I love a Dutch angle, right? Especially when I'm shooting events, and especially if I'm shooting events and people in motion, because it kind of helps it extends my composition space, right? Because instead of going across a horizontal plane or a vertical plane, I have this corner to this corner, and so it just gives me like a lot more canvas to work with, and it's just good for movement. But when you're shooting like still, kind of like not action-packed types of subject matter like this is here, you want to make sure your image is balanced, and you don't have any things that are going to show us how imbalanced the image is, like that table, right? The table, and when you have lines and horizontal or vertical lines, if your image isn't completely level, sometimes those lines will really work against you in terms of like people's ability to view it and go, this is kind of slanted, and you can really tell it's slanted because of this table. If the table wasn't there, you probably wouldn't notice it much at all. But otherwise, especially for a raw image, great work. Great work. Love the lighting. You did great with the colors. They're very true, as well as your decisions when it came to your hierarchy of exposure, right? In that exposure triangle. You made the right decision. Great work. Great work. So let's go into I want to see that image that we were just talking about. Hold on. Yeah, bring that in there. Also, too, at any moment, if anyone has any questions or concerns or comments about the stuff we're talking about, feel free to pop in, right? So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but just kind of give you an idea of how I would approach an edit for something really cool and funky and artistic like this. Number one, I'm going in, I'm cleaning up generally, right? I want to clean up all my artifacts before I start working on the actual like exposure of everything. If you don't know what I'm doing, if you haven't used Lightroom yet, we will get to that in our course. If you know what I'm doing, or if you kind of know what's going on, I can definitely explain to you what I'm doing right now. But instead of I'm not healing, I'm not cloning because I don't want to use a different part of the area. You can see a little the graphic, right? I want to get rid of this. They have a cool AI thing, so I'm going to go through and make all my marks first, right? Making all my marks. This little line is discolored, so I'll get rid of that as well. Let's see what else. Get rid of this guy. I think that's it, right? We got some of this right here. You guys can see these like little really dark areas. Well, just some stuff I'm just like, you know what, just get it out of there, right? Just get it out of there. We're doing as much as we can to just like clean up as much as we can. I'm undecided about this little hole because
I was just thinking about that.
it's distracting, but it's just a hole. So we're gonna see. We're gonna get rid of it. We're gonna see. You know what we're gonna do? We're not gonna get rid of that. We're gonna do it on a separate one because if it doesn't work, I don't want to have to undo everything we did. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're good on the removals. So we're just gonna hit remove. Hopefully AI don't, trip on me. Usually goes through without a hiccup. And sometimes, if you use the other tool, like the heal tool, it doesn't have this it doesn't necessarily create or think for you. It'll just kind of get rid of it immediately. But it's also not, you'll have more likelihood to be wrong, right? So let's see what we got. Solid. So we can already tell, like just immediately the distractions are gone, right? This is before, after. Like you see that? They're little things, but it's quite significant in terms of like our focus, right? So what else do we got? We said we want to see if we want to get rid of this guy. Jeez Louise. We say we want to see what this looks like. We'll go in. We're going to try it now. We're not sure. We're just joshing, right? We're just messing around. I think it works. I'm not mad at it. Solid. Perfect. Right? So, what I like about this image, I wish I could remember the name of this artist, dude. It was this lady, and she was a painter, and she had an exhibit at the High. I think it was like last year. I do such a bad job at like remembering things, not remembering things, but like, I don't know. I call myself being in the moment, but then when I want to reference and go back to stuff, I'm like, man, you should have wrote it down, you goofball. But and I'm also one of those people, like, I don't like to take pictures of art in museums. Just me. No knock to it. No knock to it. I might take a cell phone image of something for like reference later on, but like I'm not going to just flick up everything that I look at just because it's like, it's like I'm here. I'm just going to be there. All right, I'm going to look at it with my eyes. But I wish I did, because she had these paintings of like cityscapes where she had essentially no details in the buildings themselves at all. And it was almost very much like silhouettes, right? And it was like simple colors. Like, it was really dope. It was really, really dope. And that's what really inspired me to shoot buildings like this. What we talked about, Jasmine, during our last photo walk, was just kind of like exposing for the sky. And what that does is it just gives you these really cool, unique things that don't exist anywhere else, right? Now, when I talk about our subject matter being light, right? If I were to bring down our shadows and our blacks and, not too much, right? And to bring up our whites and our highlights, I'm purposely kind of like crushing it just to give you an example, right? If we bring up our contrast, this is a completely unique shape that does not exist anywhere in the world, right? It doesn't exist. And things don't exist without light, right? So essentially, like, this is hopefully I'm not getting too like floaty and weird with this, but this is how you create absolutely unique artwork as a photographer. It's that you utilize light as like a paint, and the subject matter is the canvas, and then especially with a situation like this when you're shooting like for the sky instead of for the buildings, it's a very unique way of shooting something that can only be done based on like the angle that you're shooting at. And it's just dope. It creates a really cool perspective, really abstract type of look, and especially if you go with like a monochromatic post process, and you really exaggerate some of the lights, right? Like if you were to do something like that, this is really cool. I have a preset for when I'm shooting with fisheye, and so it kind of does like a fisheye correction, but it really warped this building. That looks dope. I might have to investigate that later. I'm going to see if I can find one of my black and white. Okay, here's a good one. Bam. So, right. Suppose for like we're just bringing out our lights. We're bringing out our brights as much as we can, and we know that some of these colors, like we know that some of these areas have colors. So what we can do is we know the blue is in there, right? So let's go around and see what happens with our blue. We just bring our blue up. That's crazy. It looks wild, right? What are the other colors there? We got blues, we got some yellows. So maybe we need to bring up our yellows to kind of like match the blues that we're doing. Maybe some oranges in there too, a little bit green. And right now I'm just literally going through and just seeing where my colors are, right? Because even though I'm in black and white, there are colors on the image that we can still isolate. To create and help cater to the image that we're looking for. So we found the missing colors in our sky, right? So now we can go with our blue, our purple, and go with the blue to kind of match it a little bit, not too much. Maybe some magenta. Is magenta in there? There's a little bit of magenta in there, right? We'll bring that up. Now, green is in the windows, orange in here. Got some orange in there, some red, not so much. So we are getting some weird artifacts. So that means we're doing too much. So we're just gonna bring that down a little bit so it's not crazy, right? Bam. We're gonna use our brush tool. Now, of course, if you use Lightroom, the free version, you may not have access to all these tools. But there are lots of free alternatives. Like I put GIMP and that's in our, I think it's in our gear and accessories, or it might be in our notes and resources. Let me see. Yeah, so the link to GIMP is in our notes and resources. It's a free Photoshop / Lightroom competitor if you don't want to pay that bread. So what I would do is use our brush tool, and I'm gonna rush through this obviously, so it's gonna be kind of funky. So I'm just gonna come through, gonna select all of these things. I know I want to do some stuff with the whatevers. I want to do that same thing here. I want to do some stuff with the windows. Now that we got those, now we can adjust the exposure and the colors and anything really for those areas without affecting the rest of the image. So as we can see, we can really go in and mess with our lights. And I don't want to bring up our exposure because I don't want to bring up the dark areas. I might go a little bit actually, right? But I really want to focus on my highlights, bring up my whites, and then add some contrast. Maybe we'll see if we can go to our curves. I'm rushing through, so I apologize for those who don't know what I'm doing. I just want to kind of mess around just to see. We're doing some things. But with a little bit more time, you kind of see the idea, right? Like isolating some of the areas that we want to edit individually or independently from the other parts, and then really just kind of leaning into some of the stuff that can add and make the image look a lot more dynamic, right? So I went in specifically to brighten up some of the windows, brighten up the sky, darken some of the shadows, and got rid of things that were distracting, and just create an interesting image. And I think I might bring the exposure down on everything really quick, just to kind of like exaggerate that. And then I'm going to go to my curves because I love a good little smoky film look. I kind of want to bring my whites down a little bit right there. Boom. And then I want to see how that looks if we do this. Ooh, spooky. I like that. But you see what I'm saying? So it brings up a little bit more detail in the buildings, but not in a destructive way to where it looks distracting. So I'm here for that. Yeah, bro. It's
you just change the exposure?
Yeah, so I changed the exposure a little bit, but for the spooky look, remember, we go to our curves and we plot a point to keep our curve from going out of control. And remember what I do is whenever I'm messing around with my curves, generally, I put a point at each intersection, because then when you do that, each square leading up to the top right, which is our brightest brights, and our bottom left, which are our darkest darks, when you put a point at each intersection, it basically creates and mimics our highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. Right? It's hard to use curves generally because we don't know how to make that connection between the other exposures. But when you do it this way, to me, especially at the beginning stages, it really helps kind of put things into perspective. And remember, what we want to do is to give that smoky look. We grab our bottom point and we just pull it up a little bit. And that's what gives us like that smoky film look. That's the cheat code, right? For any of y'all who are like, into like that, if you were on Tumblr back in the Tumblr days, and you were like, man, that Tumblr smoky, like moody look, that's how you do it right here. You get an image, any image, put your curves on it, bring that guy up there like that, bam, Tumblr, in instant. And it's a great thing. And you do that and you add a little bit of noise and grain, you're cooking, right? But yeah, something like that is really interesting, really unique. And you can either go with the approach where you keep, some of the detail and you go with a smokier look and you can keep the details in the buildings, or you can get rid of all of them and just go with like a really deep, weird Gotham City type of vibe, right? There's no wrong answer. And just looking at, let's go before, after, just an idea. Obviously, you make the final decision and you know what makes the most sense. And there's no right or wrong when it comes to your artistic approach. But any questions, concerns, ideas about that at all?
No, it's great.
Cool beans. Cool
I
beans.
wouldn't have thought about black and white. I don't really think in those terms, even though I like the dark pictures. But yeah, that makes sense to consider black and white when it's dark and you have details.
Yeah, I mean that's perfect. And honestly, just as we're shooting and we're still getting acclimated with just like our cameras and like the process of shooting photography, like I personally say don't think too much about post. Even like maybe edit every now and then, maybe throw a photo in there that you really really are connected to that you want to edit. Maybe throw it in there just to kind of get familiarized with like your software. But for the most part, like, don't feel like you need to throw the whole gallery and all your images into Lightroom, or you don't need to edit everything. Not every image needs to be, cooked and like made into a final art product. Like just get familiar with shooting, get comfortable, get confident, and then, I think naturally you're going to be like, man, I need to get rid of this thing, or I like this image, but it's a little too dark. I wonder if I can fix this in post production. Like that's the approach. Like post production is not an inevitable stage of photography. It is something that you use to kind of like, mitigate some damage, or maybe help complement something, or maybe add some value to it. I tend to edit everything that I shoot, but that's only for like small things, right? Like I need to add like a little bit of sharpening, and then maybe, maybe some stuff to kind of like help bring the image back to its original look, because things don't necessarily always match how our eyes see them, and cameras are only trying to imitate the magic and wonder of our human bodies. So you might shoot something and be like, the colors aren't as rich or beautiful as I've seen them, and if you want to bring them back to how they naturally are, that's solid. But don't feel like you are required to edit everything just because you shot it. Some stuff is good out the box, right? That's the cool thing about Earth and life, is that the shit rocks, right? Yeah, okay. We did go a little bit later than not that I wanted, but just a little bit later. And I do want to be respectful of people's time. And so the other presentation I had, I think we can save that for another day. We'll save that for another day because it's lengthy, and that's not like a presentation that I would like rush through. So, if we do have any questions or concerns, or other feedback stuff, I'm super down. Fucking cat show, say less. All right, but
I was gonna say one other thing.
anything, yeah. We have time. I'm not saying we're ending now, but I'm saying like we don't have enough time to do the whole other presentation. So we definitely open up the questions or concerns. But please continue.
Oh, I was just curious about the photos from last night.
Oh, yes. Let me where did I put them? Are they on the
If they're accessible. If not, no
They
worries.
are.
Look
No,
at
no,
them
no.
whenever.
They are accessible. I'm just trying to remember whether or not I I don't know if I put them on my hard drive or if I put them on if they're still on the chip. They might still be on the chip. Oh, geez, Louise. Papa cheese. I think I got it. Cool, cool, cool.
Hey, thank you so much for this, but I am exhausted. I gotta dip.
Yes, yes. Thank
I'll
you
see you
for
on Sunday. It was nice to meet y'all.
absolutely. Thank you
Nice
for
meeting
signing
you.
up.
Bye,
Thank you.
Olive.
Later.
Bye.
Later.
Yes.
All right, let me plug this guy up. All right. Cool beans. Cool beans. These the ones from last night? No, these are like I can't remember. These might be from 2 weeks ago. Oh, yep, they are. All right, bet. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So, um, yeah, these are all raw images. All raw images. And so honestly, what stands out to me right now, and like, for example, right, I was seeing a couple images here. Like, it's just a difficult thing, you know. And sometimes you gotta you gotta just shoot confidently and just be patient with yourself sometimes because in a situation where you don't have as much control over the setting, the lighting, or even though you don't have as much control over the exposure that you want, it's going to be a lot harder to get that image and you're just going to have to spend more time in that shot, right? So like here, just for example, there was a certain shot that I wanted and I got it, but I got it partially, right? So I seen them kind of having a cool interaction, and so I shot there. I knew I had the framing that I wanted. I got the exposure and like how I wanted it to look visually, and I knew that there were limitations because to get that exposure, I knew that my shutter had to be slower than I would have preferred. Um, so it required me to just be a little bit more patient with my shot. And so I shot in moments where they were moving and I just missed a couple times, right? This isn't bad. I'm not mad at this. This is like one of those happy accidents because I do like the detail that is retained in some of like just the areas that she has. But this is not the shot I wanted, right? But it happened, right? This obviously is not the shot I wanted. This is partially the shot I wanted. I didn't really want her to be covering her as much as she is, but I got enough so it works. But as you can tell, I wasn't content with that by itself. So I shot a couple frames and then I realized that I lost a moment. So I was like, you know what? This is close, but it's not her face isn't or it's not in an orientation that is flattering. So it's not usable. Even though I have I have the framing, I got the sharpness, everything that I wanted about this image, I got here, but I just missed the moment. So I tried again, and I moved on. Wasn't happy, right? This shot started off pretty strong. I got an image that's decent. Wanted to stay, see if I can grab something more. I felt because I got because the first shot was, moderately successful. I felt confident not spending as much time there. This is an okay shot, not a good shot. By that time, I was like, all right, whatever, I'm out. Right? Decent shot. I felt happy enough with that. I just got out of there. And also, too, a lot of times I'll stop shooting once people start becoming aware that I'm shooting, and then I get out of there. Like I don't, unless it's like a specific type of subject I'm shooting at. I don't really like people, knowing like posing, like especially for this room, right? I always start off with an intention, and I just refine, right? Got an idea. I hit it there. I felt confident there. Cool shot, but I was just gonna stay in there, stay in that. I'm kind of like staying in that mode, right? And as you can tell, and maybe you can't tell, but since you both have been in that room you probably can kind of see where I am. But as you can see, like I popped in, shot drums, turned to my left, right? So first of all, I started off wide and low. Then I kind of came up, kept it wide, got in a little bit tighter. All I did was turn to my left, right? All I did was turn to my left. Turn to my right a little bit because I seen this, these two girls doing some stuff right next to me, right next to the subject I shot before. Then turn to my left a little bit, shot over someone's head who's sitting on that couch. Like I'm still in that same spot, right? Popped back on to her because I'd like to drink. Turned left again, got drums, look a little bit closer in, right? Turned again. She's like right here. You can see the glass. She's right here next to the bar, next to drums, right? I liked her hair. I liked her profile. This lady is right behind this lady. So all I did was turn a little bit to the right. Boom. Right? Shot again. Right? Went back to my lady who was right here. As you can see, that's the same. Get out of here. Right? I went back to the same lady who was in front of that dude. I got a different shot from a different angle. Right? Rotated back on drums. Let's see what else I got. Went back to my friends who over here. And then, so you see all those shots and all those different angles and all those different subject matters. I got all of that before I moved. So now I just finally moved to a new spot. But when I say, you remember, when you're shooting an area like that and you have limited area, you have, limited opportunity to move around or, get certain angles. I know that my lighting there is solid. Like it's a decent spot. And in most cases, if I see a shot across the room and I go trying to chase it, it's going to be gone by the time I get there. Now, when I'm over there, I might look across the room again and see something happening over there. And then I might see something over there and I'll see something over there. And I might see something in the spot I just left. So sometimes the best practice is like find a good area with decent light where you can get a couple cool exposures, right? Like I like this area because it's really bright and I have a lot more room to like have a faster shutter speed or, get more creative with my aperture or even bring my ISO down. So because I know the lighting in this area is a lot better than anywhere else and I have more control, I'm going to come and use this as like my grazing grass. And like I'll pop in, I'll stay there, and I'll work the room. I'll work that shot. Remember? Like we talked about before. Like I work the shot. Like I get in and I just did a bunch of this. 360s. I might pop back over here, pop back over here. But there's so much, especially a room like this, there's so much going on that you don't necessarily need to run around looking for shots too much. Find a good area where a good shot can exist and just, work it. Same thing here, right? I get behind the bar, just looking for shots. She had a good reactions. I had a good exposure. I liked what I was getting. So I just stayed there and I chose to be greedy. And I was like, I'm just going to get as much as I can. Once it's kind of started to run dry, I let it go. And then also they had some cool stuff going on here. Bam. Just kind of went to go grab those shots. Stayed in that area for a good bit. Stayed with them for a good bit because, I just keep it very, versatile, right? Same here with these drinks. So I'm making a drink, got involved. And I'm just working my shots, right? I'm working my shots. I like the lighting, right? So right? So look, for example, the shot started off with not a flattering angle, not a flattering shot, but I know the lighting here is cool. So what I decided, I was like, I'm just going to stay here, right? Got this, did some other stuff, and I just waited for her to start doing things that I was like, oh, bet. Now we got a cool shot. Bam. And so now I'm just going to knock out this area. Went back to my friends here, went back to this lady. Same thing. Remember, I shot her shaking that up somewhere else. Now I'm shooting it from a different angle, a little bit closer. It's all story, right? Bam. Shooting over the shoulder. Sometimes I'll shoot over the shoulder of somebody that's talking to someone else because one, I can kind of hide. And then what's really cool is that, sometimes they'll notice you when you do that and like they won't break the conversation. They'll just start to like smile or do things that, that just come out really well, like really, really flattering, right? Hold on. Somebody calling me? I'll answer that later. And so and listen, this is the part that photographers don't show you, right? You're seeing all my misses. You're seeing it's easy to look at the the high bias post and be like, oh my God, these photos are so good. He never misses is what they say. But I miss all the time. Like I constantly miss, but I shoot so much that I have a lot. Well, if I just have a lot more to choose from when I'm submitting and showing my work, right? So I'm just in this spot. They had a good moment, right? Boom, and then let's go inside, right? Let's go. Let's go to the outside area. Let's blow this up real quick. View extra large. This is all old controllerized stuff. Boom. Right? Looking for little details, right? Like it's about like you shooting images of individuals, but think about like what can you do to tell a whole story of like you and that night. And not necessarily nothing any like, narrative based. You don't have to like shoot somebody doing anything particular, but part of what makes this room so valuable aesthetically is all of the other little things. And sometimes shooting unimportant things in a very important way can just be really interesting when it comes, for conveying value. So something like that, super, super cool. Cool colors, cool details. And I just like the lighting on this thing. Bet. Just works. Right? See what else we got. Right? Let's see. And honestly, for that night, it was a lot going on. So the majority of what I did was just like finding a good spot and just kind of like posting up and just just doing my rounds and just hopefully catching something that was going to work. Right. So here's an example. Right. I came to this first spot, saw these ladies dancing, was like, okay, let me grab this. Right. Wasn't working. They weren't as comfortable yet, and people were walking by. So all I did was just turn to the left, grab some other shots, been patient, seen this lady here, then I came back, right? See if I can get another shot. Things weren't necessarily working out, turned left again, went to go grab some other shots, right? Went to go do some other stuff. Bam. Right? I think I went back to get the ladies again. But I'm still all these shots, everything that you just seen from those last group of ladies. I have not. The only thing I did was rotate. So all I'm doing is just rotating around. Right? These ladies were like directly behind me. Got this dude right here. Boom, boom. And then I moved a little bit. Then I moved. Right? Saw these dudes. I mean, this couple, right? And so I seen them. I liked what they had going on, right? And I liked their energy and their chemistry together. And it just like they had a lot of great moments. And so I kept an eye on them and I kept moving throughout the night. But I stayed close until I got the shot that I really, really wanted, right? I don't like any phones, right? I don't like when people are interacting and their phones in their hand, but it's a decent shot. And I remember I got a really, really good shot of them. Really good shot of them later on. This one, right? Yeah, solid. Right?
Yeah, I like the lighting.
Great lighting, just cool area. I'm shooting at an angle, right? I'm not level like I should be, but I shot wide enough so that when I do go in to like level things out, I don't lose too much detail or I don't lose too much stuff that adds that for the story that I'm looking for, right? So you can see right there, like a shot wide enough because I'm compensating for the fact that like I'm most likely going to miss because I know that missing in this room is very common. So I'm making sure that I don't do anything that's going to like make it harder for myself in post-production later. And then let me go back. Came back to my spot. So what it is, like I'm finding spots that have good lighting that are going to create good images. Spots that have great composition, by themselves. And I'm just doing laps. I'm going to my different spots and my little, areas that I know are fire. And then, as you do your different laps, different people are going to be there. And it's going to look like there's a bunch of different subject matter that I'm shooting, but technically, I'm not shooting the subject. I'm shooting the light. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like technically, I'm not shooting a bunch of people. I'm shooting the light, and the only difference is that different people are getting into my light, and that's what makes it look diverse, right? So like right here, remember, this is the same area that lady was in with the striped shirt, like the striped green shirt. I'm gonna come show you. That's something that I really, that's really like key that I want people to understand, right? So right here, boom.
Okay.
technically this shot and this shot, they're the same shot. I'm sure I'm here. I'm only here because my light is here, right? She's doing cool shit in the light, but I'm here for the light. I'm not chasing subject. I'm not for an event like this. I'm not saying that that's not how you shoot in general, but for an event like this where the lighting is difficult to capture. You're in low light conditions and you don't have as many options because you may not have gear, you may not have flash or whatever. In that type of circumstance, you find your good light and then you shoot that light all night. That's what you do, right? And I'm just here. I'm still in the same spot right here in front of the bar. I'm just shooting. All I'm doing is going left and right, zooming, shooting up higher, shooting down lower, just changing my angle. Same. Look at this shot right here. Boom. This is up high, wide. Same young lady. I'm shooting down low, vertical, and I'm shooting tighter, right? Completely different vibes and energies and shots. The only thing that's changed is not the subject matter, it's just my approach and my implementation, right? It's heavy. And I want to go back to that couple because I really like that shot I got of them. It was fire. Did I miss it? Am I tripping? No, it's right here. Bam. So I knew that couple was just having a great energy. So like I found this shot and I was like, bet, I got him. But that's because like I found areas in which people are exhibiting the behavior that I think is going to be cool and interesting, or it's subject matter or lighting that I think is cool and interesting. And so I just kept an eye on it. The later shots aren't as strong, but like the first shot, like this one right here, I love it. Like just fire. And in most cases, probably in post production, I'm most likely gonna get rid of this phone because what the heck? Why is it even like this with the light on? That's crazy. And then that's pretty much it. I didn't really do too much outside because people weren't outside when I was there. It was mostly it was they even when they opened up the garage, like some people kind of went out. For the most part, everybody was trying to pack themselves in like sardines. But that's those are some of my raws.
That was great.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I just couldn't imagine. That's why I kept like, is Stefani here? I know I would have seen him by now.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine you being able to move around. And I don't know the videographer's name.
Reese.
What's his name?
Maurice.
Oh yes, Maurice. Yes. And I saw Maurice kept trying to get around the bar. And he would stay in certain areas and of course be behind drums. But I was like, whew, this is in this one room to try to be able to like navigate it and have space. But that makes sense.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes when you have limited options for navigation and finding space, don't navigate. Just find the area and shoot and get there, and just get as much as you can. Work your areas, and you'll be. I think you'll be successful, especially if you shoot and you follow the light. Right? Ironic.
Yeah.
But heck yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I was just curious how it all played out yesterday.
Of course. At any time, you can always, ask or tap in or, just ask on me about my process or what I do, and just I'm always willing to share. Thank you all so much. I think this was solid. I definitely want to wrap. It's been almost 2 hours now, so I definitely don't want to take too much of your time. If you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to just drop those and ask away. And if you have some stuff that you did not submit that you want me to talk about, you can put that in feedback chat with your questions as well. Thanks again so much. I'm excited. New cohort just popped off. I'm excited for the rest of this cohort as well as, some other cool shit that we got planned to come up soon. So thank you guys again. Stay blessed, and I'm very grateful. Have a good night.
Thank you, Bonnie. Y'all have a good night.
Of course. Thank you. Peace.
Bye.